Hi, my name is Zaheer from London Mountaineering Club, and I'll be sharing with you the story of my climbing trip to Quetta in Pakistan. It was presented as a live stream for London Mountaineering Club Social on 16th of April. We somehow lost the recording, so I'm recording it again for YouTube. Just to give you an idea of where Quetta is, let's share the screen. Right. Here, the red dot you see is Quetta is the provincial capital of Balochistan, the biggest province in Pakistan. The geography, as you see, all that those green areas is the Indus and the rivers. It's heavily populated, the area which is marked green on this map. And then anything to the north of it, northwest of it, essentially is quite barren and thinly populated. So Quetta is located close to the Afghanistan's border and also on the route from Iran as well, the Balochistan's border with Iran. Now, my connection with Quetta, um, uh, I will just slideshow is I was born there and brought up. Um, that's me right in the middle. I was um, introduced to outdoors in a brutal way. My dad, my uncle, and granddad, all three of them were quite keen at greyhound hunting. So they used to have over weekends, they used to set off quite early in the morning and spend the whole day with the greyhounds. This is my cousins. And I didn't really enjoy it at the time because it involved really early start on the only holiday we used to have, and second, it involved walking on uneven ground for miles and miles. Um, but so I joined some of these trips, and then as when I was a teenager, that's sometime in 80s, got my hands on the family's shotgun. So I was um, joining these trips, some of these, but mainly just to chase the birds. That's my uncle instead standing in front of me, and my cousin and others. Um, Now, my first trip to Pakistan for climbing to Quetta was in 2017, and that was inspired by an article that I found on online, the Himalayan Journal. I mean, this article was written back in 1937, and Lieutenant J.R.G. Finch. And it describes the area. It has some pictures of when they were setting up the climb. Quetta was strategically quite um, important for the colonials. It was at the border with Afghanistan, which was the buffer state at the time. And so there was a big, and there still is a big military cantonment. So they were setting up routes around the hills in Quetta. And this was the climb which interested me, the Great Step climb in 2017 that I attempted. That's all the description. Let's go back to the pictures. And I got in touch with some of the local climbers. I managed to locate a few, and then we went and attempted this route. The picture on the left is the 1934, and you see it's a 9-pitch route, multi-pitch. And we managed to get to the 7th pitch, which is basically coming down, and the 8th pitch is the crux. And this is just a picture of someone climbing, with a little dot here, um, on the great step. So our route really took us on this red line, and then we managed to get up and going down the 7th page, but the 8th pitch we found, which we describe as the crux of the climb, and consists of climbing the crag for 70 feet to a point where it widens to a chimney. The holds are good. But what has happened over 80 years, the crag has widened up. I mean, the area suffers from seismic activity. So it but it was pretty much featureless on both sides, and the crack was too wide to place any gear. So from here, I couldn't see any way to go up on this without protection. And we had our, thumbs down selfie, and we abseiled down the rest of it. We didn't finish the climb, but we found on our way down was this kitten or a knife, which must have been hammered in by Finch and his other climbers at the time. You can see the crack is widened so much that the kitten was just sitting in there, whereas it would have been hammered in. So it showed that first there, this climb was probably not, no one has climbed it for at least for decades. And secondly, we were on the right climb. That's Lieutenant Finch, later Brigadier Finch, who wrote the first article and set up the two big climbs, some of the other climbs, the Great Step of Takatu and the Thorn-bush, which we attempted on my recent trip. So this was the aim for this trip, and again I was prepared to bail out if we get into a situation where it couldn't go ahead. But on this case, it was an arête, so the escape was probably slightly easier. It's a twin peak mountain located to the northeast of Quetta in its limestone. This is one of the middle pitches of Grand Arête, and in the later picture you'll probably see that we are climbing in slightly better gear than those guys with the rope around their waist. This is another picture of the crux of the climb, really, on the Grand Arête Takatu, which is high up at the bastion. And that's WK Marples who's leading the pitch. A long shot of the arête is quite a prominent feature seen from the city. And you can see it sort of steepens up as it goes up. The whole climb is about 1,500 feet, and it can be divided in sections. The first section is the gable, which we found is a triangular section, which is pretty much gone these days. There must have been rockfall. Then you have the arête, which is mainly a scramble. So there's a bit of climbing at the gable. Still need to. There's two pitches here, and then the arête, which is a scramble up to the gap. There's quite a exposed drop here at the gap, and there's a 60-meter pitch here, the third pitch and fourth pitches, and then you hit the crux really. The angle is quite steep and it's still a slab and it's exposed on both sides. And the summit is 3,475 meters. Right, so flying into Quetta, the flight path is such that you can't miss Takatu on your right. So just on the right, you see the mountain slightly differently. So I had a close look when we were flying in, and you can see there's some snow left in. It was May, but the snow from the previous season was still there. Quetta is a chaotic city. Traffic and generally it's very dense at the moment, different from when I was growing up there. But I was picked up by my friend, my school friend from the airport, and was taken straight to a feast, a lunch of this local delicacy. You still have these traditional tea stalls. It's a picture of one of the tea stalls, and that's my best friend. We had a big lunch that evening. I met with I'll introduce you. The guy Aziz is on the far right. He's a trekker, essentially a trekker and explorer, and he's been to most parts of Balochistan. I climbed with him on my first trip. And Bismillah, also I met him on my first trip. He's again a trekker. but he's got the head for heights, and he would scramble up probably on some of the climbs without solo up some of the climb. Doda has climbed in US, so he is a competent belayer, and he seconds, doesn't lead. So we were planning to climb in for the warm-up climb, which we thought. So that was the dinner we had. We had our supplies ready, and the following day we were going to drive early morning to this area. So this is quite a city, and just to the northeast, there's this um, uh, road. It's not a tarmac road. It's a gravel road which runs in this valley to and then connects to the main road on the other side. And there's a small village which we were aiming to use as our base camp. Um, so we were planning to stay there for a few days. Now this is the next morning, early morning start about 6 a.m. and we head out to get to the mountain. You see the twin peaks. Takatu is quite prominent from anywhere in Quetta. So our aim was to stay at Naga village, which is the highest village in the area. This is the sort of the dirt track that you see, and then there's another track which takes to Naga village, and there's a shelter there. The climb that we were aiming for that day as a warm-up climb, which we thought we could do, was located there. Just to give you a brief description of this original climb, the Thorn-bush crack. This is written by um, Lieutenant Finch, and it says here that it took them 3 hours right at the end, 3 hours on the first ascent, and it was first ascent was by R.K. Hamblin. So using that as the basis, I thought we could do it in the morning and we'll have the afternoon free. And that's the small village uh, which we stayed for 3 nights. There's a small sort of guest room. There's a small mosque here, and about 10, 12 houses really, courtyard houses, inward looking. And that's the the drive to the village, Naga village. Uh, on some of these trips, the most dangerous part of the trip is sometimes the drive, and you can see it's a road which is get washed away with rain, and then it's they bring bulldozers and level it up, so it's all very uneven. So that was early in the morning. So this room was what we used as our base camp for next 3 days. The altitude of the village is 2,300 meters, and their main income is really from livestock. And they were building this another shed for the livestock because that year they had good rain and snow, so the mountain was quite green. Yeah, that gives you the coordinates of the village and the altitude. So we were aiming for Thorn-bush Crag. It's a multi-pitch climb, about 100 meters. And picture on the left is the 1934 picture, and what you see on the right is the most recent picture. So we dumped our stuff at the village and started walking to the start of the climb. And underestimating it, thinking it's mainly a sort of the warm-up climb. On the way, again, looking at other opportunities. So this is the first site of the climb. And as you can see, it's it has a corner on the right. So there's a crack which runs throughout where you can protect yourself. But there are a lot of bushes and small trees which sort of and blocks some of the areas. And then the angle sort of steepens up higher as you go high. Um, Here, there are there's this pair of cracks which runs on the left, but then it merges into the slab and limestone. It is quite polished around here. So I'll come to the bit more detail of this climb, how we did it. So it started off with a bit of chaos. I started climbing on the left, looking at the description, as the first part of the climb was supposed to be the hardest, but this section seems to have had some rockfall, so it has changed. And Bismillah just went up ahead of me and shouted, say, look, we have another easy way up here, which resulted at me at the back with all the gear, and Doda, who was going to belay right at the bottom, and Aziz and Bismillah leading the way. There's a view from the, as you go slightly higher up, there's another village lower down, and the visibility was good. There was few clouds, spring. So I set up myself for the first pitch, somewhere in the middle of where the description says the first angle should be. And again, Bismillah is sort of holding the rope, although he's not belaying, he's scrambling up behind me. But I was protecting and went higher up. I was going to do all the leading, so the idea was I can bring them up. And here, there was a small sort of cave where I set up the first pitch and brought up the second, but again, things were going a bit pear-shaped. It was a 30-meter pitch. I ran out of the rope, and you can see the belayer sitting without the rope here. So he had to throw the rope down, and he managed to get to him, and he was tied in and he was brought up. So this, again, the space was a bit tricky here for all four of us. This is the second page, which I would say was the most enjoyable. If any one of you has climbed the Scavenger in Three Cliffs Bay in Gower, it was that sort of, sustained crack, really nice moves, and very well protected. You can see I have a number of pieces here. Higher up, I had to start breaking the pitches because of the bushes and the rope drag. So just behind that bush, I set up the next page and brought everyone up, because also I was mindful of having the space for everyone to find a ledge or somewhere we can all be where we can all stay. That's now I'm belaying Aziz, and that's another picture of the same climb. That's Aziz below us. So that was a good anchor. There are at least 2 or 3 pieces of gear and well protected. Amazing views from here. That's me bringing everyone up. Again, it's a good ledge, and from here it became quite challenging because on the right, as you see here, zoom in, this bushes, and those are quite thorny bushes, are completely blocking the crack if I were to follow this up. Also the crack is too big to be protected here. And it's quite steep here. On the left, the rock is quite polished. So I had to make a decision how to tackle that. We were lucky we didn't find much loose rock. There's this big fella in the left, which after the climb I tried to move clean it, but it didn't move, which meant it's probably going to stay there for some time. That's again bringing up Aziz and Bismillah. I think that's a small video of the last person I'm bringing up is Doda. We are all on a very small ledge here. And this section of climbing, as I said, was really enjoyable, good technical moves, and all very well protected. So I decided that to tackle this right corner, I need to go up on the left. And I thought if I go up on the left, it can be protected. It's a nice crack climbing, a twin crack, and then follow this thin crack, maybe protected somewhere, and go over the bush, and then come down, clean it, and then climb it again. So that was the plan. Didn't quite work out because what I found here is the rock down here was completely polished. These were no good for any gear, or I mean, this crack was no good for any gear or even for sort of handholds. And I was coming to a dead end here because essentially this lovely climb here, the lovely crack here, was merging into the rock. So I hammered into pitons here and then got lowered, went, managed to took a swing over to catch this tree on the right, and then cleared up this bush and cleared up some of these bushes. Bit of gardening involved here, really, and then came back and cleaned the root. So there are two pitons now. Unfortunately, we had to. I had to do that, and above that. Um, so I led that route, and then it started raining. Um, and the rock was becoming really difficult. It tend to have a thin layer of dust, and a small amount of water just makes it really slippery. So that's Aziz being hauled up in one section. And it finishes into a cave. And after the cave, it's easy ground. So we are again sheltered, and we were lucky that I finished that climb just before the rain started. And the others, they were on the top rope, so they were on the rope, so they were able to sort of pull themselves up. So it was success. That's right at the top. There's a tree, and we finished around 6 p.m. So starting around 10 a.m., finishing at 6. It took good 8 hours. I think there was a couple of things. It was climbing in 4, but also underestimating when this is a picture of going back. That's a big step, the great step as Finch described it, and the summit on the right. And that's the description. And now, so that was the description by Finch. Now, something interesting in the description you'll find here is when I was reading it, I got curious, and I found out that Lieutenant Finch or Brigadier Finch came from a family of lawyers. He joined military, the Royal Engineers, but then again, his family, his son was Lord Mayor of London. So some of the language here is quite legal. Now, for instance, here it said this is the most difficult part of the climb and liable to hold up the proceedings indefinitely. Well, for us, lucky enough, a lot of it was broken ground. The second pitch was the ascent of slab, which was correct. The third pitch was again Forcing through a small tree adds to the difficulties, and the landing is reached and movement around the road corner gives the most spectacular view. The fourth pitch is again here the interesting description. At one point, occupation of the crag is disputed by small thorn bush. A large person will have great difficulty in forcing his way through, way up. Yes, I think that we found few bushes, and that tree probably has gone, but there were quite a few bushes. And so this is probably the hardest section, the fourth pitch. I would say is probably a VS. Even this lower section, I would say is probably hard. So here, the second pitch. Those two pitches are the where the technical bits are. And what I didn't quite understood was this climb as a whole was exceedingly difficult. So I wasn't really, I couldn't place it, and I was still thinking it's somewhere on the range of VDIF or H hard, very difficult. But I think on reflections was probably a yes overall. So the next day after a big day, on the first day, next day was a rest day. We were just taking it easy and being spoiled by the host. Sitting in the sun is in peace and just chatting with the kids. It's quite a healthy place to live, as you can see from the faces here. Because simple life. And the guy on the left was our host, lovely guy. The guy on the right was a bit of character. He claimed he was 70 years old, and he just had a second child from his second 2-year-old child from his second marriage. So yeah, some interesting stories we shared. Yes, this is the room that the little mosque, and we spent that morning sitting around. And Bismillah mentioned he's also sometime involved with the mountain rescue. So I shared my limited knowledge of hauling someone down with a rope. It's not organized mountain rescue. I think because he's spent most of the time in the mountain, he get called if someone gets in trouble, like he had to bring someone with a broken limb down. Yeah, he said the guy recovered fully. So we made good use of the morning. This guy, Zaheer, was our driver. He also served with my dad when he was civil servant in Quetta, and he's a man of many talents. He's an amazing cook, mechanic, driver, and he took a whole week off to spend it with me. He was looking after us, and then we started sorting gear. And one of the reasons for taking it easy on that day was this guy, Naveed. Dr. Naveed, I have climbed with him the year before, and in Islamabad. He lives in Islamabad and in Abbottabad, which is close to Islamabad, at the capital. And it took him a good 12 hours in a shared taxi to come and join us here for this climb. Now he's got all the tread gear and he can lead on tread, but you don't find the opportunities around Islamabad. There aren't any opportunities for multi-pitch tread routes. There's a lot of sports climbing there, and there's a small climbing community. So when he learned of my trip, he was very keen to join us, and also he's a very good climber. So I was planning to, because I was looking at the Grand Arête as a major undertaking. So I wanted to climb with first he's doctor and he's very competent. And though there's a three of us on two 60-meter ropes. The start of the climb is at about 3,000 meters. The climb itself is about 1,500 foot or 400 meters or so. We thought we wanted to make use of the time. So we wanted to camp at the base of the climb to save time next morning. So you can start early and we'll have the whole day. If you have to bail out, at least you can get back in daylight. So our host managed to arrange 2 donkeys for us. I mean, the donkeys goes to the mountain almost every evening empty, and they bring back wood for the village, and that's their main source of fuel. In this case, they had to carry our sleeping bags and so on. So that's all sort of getting ready for the 2-hour walk to the base of the climb. It was the spring, so the mountain was beautiful. There was a lot of wild flowers as we walked past the bushes. I think spring is the best time to visit these mountains. Again, more of the wildflowers. And we found a grassy plot at about 3,000 meters. Set up our tents here. We had a closer look at the climb and came back. And this is what was supposed to be the gable, but most of it seems to have gone. You can see the fresh sort of looking rock. So I didn't feel that we could protect it here. So we used the gully on the right-hand side, which was also the descent gully. That night was amazing under the starlit sky, a little fire, and next morning around 6 a.m., this was our big day. Bismillah was already preparing the breakfast for us. He wasn't going to climb with us, but he was going to scramble up the gully, and Aziz was going to join him. So they were planning to meet us at the summit. So that's Bismillah, our host, looking after us again. So first bit of the first pitch, we started off around, I think, 8 o'clock after breakfast and so on. And there's 3 of us climbing and Bismillah in the background. The first bit is all broken ground, bit exposed, but not too technical. It's not well protected. It can be done. And then after the first pitch, which was about 20 meters or so, the second pitch, I let Naveed lead it, which was another 20, 30 meters. And the next bit was the arête, where it was essentially a scramble up. And again, Bismillah found its way to join us, scrambling. I think there's a small short video of the scramble. It's quite atmospheric. Yeah, you have panoramic views all around, and you have steep drop on both sides that you would expect on a arête. You're quite high up as well. It was a nice, sunny, warm day, not too warm. We're still on the arête, and now this next section leads us to this point where there's a gap, and then we have to protect it. I think there's a little comparison here. So if I like to compare it, there's this scoop that you see here, and that's probably that scoop, and the feature underneath, and there's a person climbing up there. I think I took the line on the left, which was the arête proper, because I felt it was mainly a scramble, where they must have protected it here. So yes, was quite interesting to see that we are following a route which was climbed I guess 80 years ago. And then you have this section which is referred to as the gap. There's steep drop on both sides, and there's a section missing here. I think here you can also see in this picture on the left, you see there's a small step here, which now is gone. So it has become a bit steep here. So that's the section which you see in the next picture, I think. So I had to, so Naveed was anchored in just in case I take a fall, and I managed to protect the next bit with 2 pieces. It was one, it was a bit technically a sort of technical move, but also it was exposed on both sides. So if you fall, you're going to take a long fall. Once above that, then again, it was around 11 a.m. That's the third page about. Then I just kept going for about 55, 60 meters. And then it was around 11 a.m. that we were above that page. And then I think there's a short video clip of bringing up the other two. This white spot you see here, I think is the snow left from the previous season. I mean, at the moment, on the day, the temperature was like good 25 degrees, quite warm. Um, And when you thought you're right height up on the middle of the climb just before the bastion, you couldn't escape the local hospitality. Aziz and Bismillah somehow found through the gully and traversed across and found us on this big ledge under the tree. And we had the tea ready, which was amazing for us. And we said goodbye to them here, and then we carried on. But now this next page is really the crux, and it took us a bit of time to work out how to do it. So essentially what you have on the right is, if you stay on the raid proper, it's completely featureless, and I couldn't see how we can protect it. And the angle is steep, but not too steep, but still, it was too bold. And on the left here, I managed to go across under this ledge and see maybe we can protect it around here. But then the water has been running down this section of the rock, and it's really polished. And I wasn't confident to sort of commit myself up here, and then knowing that there's no protection. Uh, uh, the ground is then easier afterwards, but this section didn't look good. So we decided we stay to the right of it, and yes, I think this shows the climb. So we stayed to the right and stayed on the slab, and I had to. So this just shows, the type of the rock. You have limestone, very weathered, pockety, sharp little pockets. And if you can bear the pain, then you can stay on the rock. Um, so I managed to, I was missing my micro nuts at this point, but then I managed to find a small crack to hammer in a kitten to protect the root. And from here onwards, there was that peace of mind. I have one piece of hair below me, and above that, I couldn't see really much placements. And we are quite high up on the route. And that's Naveed. He managed to follow me up. There you go. I think that's a video of, and then next section, which is actually the next section is the hardest bit, which Naveed led, and he's trying to place a camp in a crack. Um, and I'm on the ledge. The ledge was too small for all three of us. I think I wasn't feeling confident. So Dona was below, and I shouted to say, "Put your helmet on," because he was directly under the lead climber. So yeah, again, very good climbing. Again, very sharp, pockety rock, and Naveed done amazing job leading for about 50 meters of this pitch. That's again Naveed. Someone took a picture from the ground. He was in this position for a while trying to set the anchor, and yes, he managed to set his anchor. Again, it was a hanging belay. Pitch 5, this was a good 55 meters of climb. I led the next one. Well done on Naveed for leading the hardest pitch. And the next pitch is again slightly easier ground, and you're on the rate. The views were just amazing throughout. Beautiful sky, and you can see for miles. Again, I think for a change, I was proud of the anchor here. Managed to get 3 pieces and all good placements. And there you go. Bismillah is again found us. This is very close to the summit, and they walked up to the summit uh, in the descent gully, and this is where they were waiting for us. Yeah, that's us. And around 5 p.m., we managed to get to the top. So starting around 8 a.m., 5 p.m. So it's a good part of the day, and it gets dark around 7. So we still had a good couple of hours or more walk back. So just in time. Naveed asked me when we were above the hardest section if I'm carrying a flag, and I, shared my idea of carrying flag that we are, we're not conquering the mountain. We are quite insignificant compared to the mountain. It can just shake us off any minute. And he seemed to be convinced. I mean, he's climbed a 7,000 meter in China. And he's very competent. And he said, "Okay, I'm not going to carry flags in future." But yeah, this is the altitude we got here. I think the 1940 article gives it 11,390 foot, so it's fairly close to what my GPS reading was. I mean, there's a plus minus 26 foot there. It was pretty accurate reading that they had. And that's Naveed. That's his way of celebrating the summit. It's called for prayer. That's the other side of the mountain. The descent gully is quite exposed. There are sections where you still we found the snow and ice, quite exposed in some sections, but yeah, we didn't have to use rope. And the rock had amazing features in some places because the gully stays in shelter, and that's limestone. So I think this was the time to celebrate. We came back safely, and it got dark, and we were back at the guest room, and yeah, started packing to go back to Quetta that night. Mission completed. Um, and just a chit chat while waiting for Zaheer to serve the dinner. These are some of the guys who came from Quetta to join us. And a feast, which was amazing. Yes, like I said, Zaheer is an amazing cook. So, he does 3 course single-handedly for 20 people in no time. So yes, that was pretty much the end of the time. And this is just a video of the sort of recap. So the rest of the time, I was catching up with my school friends and remembering all the silly things we used to do. Those are all my class fellows from school, really. Yeah, not that we stopped doing any of those silly things as us. And looking ahead, we might, if I get the opportunity to go again, just behind the village, there's this quite obvious crack that runs to the top of the step. Looks like there's a 20-meter first pitch, there's a small ledge, and then there's another maybe 25, 30-meter pitch under the roof. And then there's another 30-meter pitch. So yes, maybe for the next trip. Thank you for listening. And on YouTube, if you have any questions, you can always write down. I'm happy to answer anything. If anyone wants to go to that area, you can get in touch. I'm happy to help. Okay, let's. Okay, guys. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.